Hi, Jeff here. I'm at the Green in the Desert project. I'm 400 meters below sea level. This project's been running for 13 years. Started off just nothing but stony desert. And there's all kinds of dryland strategies that we've used to end up in this abundant, productive oasis. I'd like to share some with you, one by one. This is a little sequence, and the first thing I'm going to talk about is mulch. Now, I think everybody's had that realization. There's a point when everybody that's been involved in organic growing anyway, has suddenly had this realization that I don't have to plow the soil. I don't have to turn it over, which is actually killing the organisms. I can feed the soil with mulch. I can feed it from above instead of destroying it from below. And it's kind of an aha moment. Oh, wow, there's this thing called mulch and mulching. Well, that's a large part of dryland strategies, because in the hot climates, and it's all the hot climates where you get a lot of evaporation, but particularly the hot dry, where the evaporation is much higher than the rainfall. That's what makes a desert. It's crucial that you cover the soil with something. And when you're starting with nothing but stones and soil and dust, then you've got to start somewhere. You've got to create something. So you're bringing mulch in to start with, and you need to move towards growing trees that will survive in really harsh conditions. And initially, they're usually very hardy desert trees, which are usually spiky, that have a great advantage that they associate with microorganisms in the soil. So they're peas and beans family, what we call leguminous trees. And they have the ability to deep tap root. They go down a long way and they hit the lower layers in the desert soils, subsoils, and they survive on very little moisture. They're very, very hardy characters. And most people don't favor these trees. They're the trees that grow when nobody's looking after the land. They recover the land on their own if you let them, but most people don't. They want to dominate the land. But they'll grow your first mulch and they'll grow your first shelter. And then you progress, building systems that supply you with your own mulch. But initially, you just got to bring in mulch, because you haven't got anything. Even these little trees, they're only small when you put them in. They're not mulch producers initially. And you've got to drip irrigate. You've probably got to get groundwater from somewhere, and you just got to get it going. The initial trees we even plant in cardboard boxes. So they're inside a little cardboard box, and it hangs out of the soil a little bit, and it's kind of sheltered inside the cardboard box a bit, and then we mulch really heavily around it, and we have to bring the mulch in. Often it's hard to stop the mulch blowing away. Now, over time, we gain mulch on site by the trees we grow that support our system. So once we've got some support species up, we can start putting our hardy fruit trees in. In this climate, olives and dates are probably our first real hardies, and then we go to pomegranate and citrus and fig and mulberry, carob. They're all classics where we are here. But we also diversify our support species, because it's really hard to work with these spiky, hardy characters that they kind of initiate our system. They're really good at that. And even in the support species, we can move to a more sophisticated assembly, which are not spiky, which recover really well from a cut, and we can produce a lot of our mulch from coppicing and pollarding. That's when you cut a tree and it regrows sticks. And then we can even manage the coppice and the pollard regrowth, and we can choose the way it regrows and shades the ground in the summer. So we don't cut anything much off our pollard and coppice support species unless we're just shaping them. We don't cut the main shade producing foliage off until it starts to cool down in the autumn at the start of winter. So then it's got time to regrow and be nice and shady when the spring comes, which is now for us here, and we start moving towards the hot summer months. You also, when you start to put an assembly together like this, you facilitate a nice, weedy, herbaceous layer that grows in winter. In other words, there's a lot of herbs that will grow in a desert. And often you have to bring in the seeds, and they won't germinate unless you've got the right conditions. In other words, you've shaded the ground, you've facilitated a condition where more and more diversity of herbaceous growth, non-woody plants, the herbs, will grow in winter. So the ground will be green in winter, and some of the fruit trees will lose their leaves because they're deciduous. And then in summer, it'll be brown on the ground because the herbs will just completely die and their bodies will go to the soil. But the leaves on the trees will come back. So any deciduous trees will put leaves on in the summer, the herbs will go down, and deciduous trees will lose their leaves in the autumn. So you've got to work with these cycles. You're creating a desert ecosystem, and in our case, it's a productive desert ecosystem. But any kind of ecosystem recovery needs to feed the soil. There's a saying, if you feed the soil, you'll feed the world, and it's true. Right? So first off, you're bringing in mulch, and then you're growing your own mulch, and you can have annual mulch in herbs that come and go and die. Right? You can put in cover crop like farmers do. You can actually plant cover crop, which only grow for the winter, but bulk down and feed the soil. And then the ideal on the ground then is to aim at perennial ground covers. So your perennial ground covers continue to live, right? They're permanent, and they're going to be slower than annuals, but once they establish, they become a carpet of insulation. And some of the best are really juicy gel plants. They're almost like ground cover succulents. And gel is an interesting thing. For deserts, gel's very interesting because gel is a liquid that acts like a solid. In other words, it doesn't flow, but it is a liquid. And it very much resists evaporation. So that's what we're about. Everything initially is an anti-evaporation strategy. It's not just mulch. There's other things as well. I'm going to talk about shade, I'm going to talk about water harvest, etc. Right now, let's talk about mulch. It's really important to get that mulch cover. So you continue to cut and drop woody branches and their leaves. You continue to let the herbs grow and die back, and some of those you can cut as well for your convenience and direct them towards productive plants. And it's really important to get the perennial ground covers so that you get a carpet of insulation, a blanket of insulation right across the ground. So let me show you some of this management. It's really quite interesting how you can work with this as a strategy. It's a strategic approach. It's not just a method. It's not just one-dimensional method. It's a two-dimensional. A strategy has a time element. So it's how you do it and when you do it. And then it just keeps going for you, and you use less and less water over time, and it self-propagates itself, and wondrous things happen. Here we go. You can see a classic herbaceous mulch has been put around this little citrus here, and it's quite thick, but it's not against the stem. So everywhere you look, there are herbs at this time of year, but there's mulch coming down and being directed towards productive plants. So there's also still quite a lot of small branches on these pollarded Leucaena. This is a classic mulch plant. It's very high nitrogen. So what you can do is you can go in with secateurs, and you still can take off the small branches. There's a few too many. So we can direct the growth of this Leucaena towards mostly its really big branches. So we'll take off all the small little ones, and that way these larger branches here will go longer and they'll create more shade. So it's a nice job. You just pick your way through, cutting off these little branches, which you know are fantastic mulch. Try and cut them right back to where the pollard cut is. And then this is all the ends. So what I've just cut off, oh, and here's one coming right at the bottom. So we don't want anything growing off the bottom. So we'll cut that one as well. We'll trim around the bottom of this guy. Here we go. There's another one on the bottom. All of these down the bottom, they have to come off because we want the performance at the top where we've got higher shade. We're going to talk about shade later. There we go. We'll trim them back. Now, this is very nice mulch. This is Leukina top cut mulch. It's full of nitrogen. It's almost like herbaceous because it's the end tip. There, look at that. That's a beautiful bit of mulch. I can crunch it up in my hand. There, high nitrogen mulch, just from a little bit of trimming. Now we can trim more off that Leukina because there's a lot of small branches, leaving the larger branches to go longer. They'll go longer and give us a broader shade. More shade the better with summer coming. So now with this, I can just take it down and aim it at this little citrus here. So I'm mulching and I'm fertilizing in this case. So I'm dropping a little bit of Leukina mulch there. That's a really good thing to be doing, is directing these mulches from these high quality pollarded trees down to little trees that need a bit of assistance, because it's more than mulch. It's actually fertilizer as well. So let's go and have a look at some ground covers. There are ground covers establishing all the way around the site now. And there's a huge patch over here. And there are many patches like it around the site. This is a Carborudus. This is a variety of Carborudus, which is a very fast, succulent ground cover. It's full of gel. I squeeze it. You can see the gel coming out on my fingers. And it just grows from cuttings. So we can just divide the end tips. You can just pull off a cutting like this and trim off the bottom leaves like that. Just rub them off with your fingers and slip it in the ground near another tree, and it becomes a carpet of mulch. Now this whole area here is covered. It's very, very easy to control, but it's a living mulch. It's even come over the wall here. This is a swale wall. These are earth-packed stone wall swales, and underneath here is a soil creation. There's a wonderful soil creation happening under there. And these are some of the very, very best constant mulches. Ground cover like this. You can actually drop mulch into it, but it is a trap for mulch. Everything that falls in here stays in here. There's a whole load of decomposing organic matter that's just fallen into this plant, and it's trapped it and grabbed it, and it's creating soil. It will even create soil on top of solid rock, on top of sandstone, on top of concrete. It's a fantastic mulch. So these mulches, they control the temperature quite a lot, which is a wonderful thing in a hot climate. So it's cooler in summer at the ground surface, which is important here, but it's warmer in winter at the ground surface, which will moderate temperatures. Here's one of my global favorites here. This is Singapore daisy, Wedelia, and it's taken off right across this section, and we've encouraged it to do so. And underneath here, always, there's great soil. There's lots of organic matter trapped down there. You can see all sorts of dead mulches. So it's a living mulch that traps dead mulch. And at the soil surface, when you get down eventually to the soil surface, you'll find it's damp and cool. And there's always a crumb structure. There's little crumbs in the soil, which means there's lots of microorganisms. These ground covers make it very friendly for microorganisms living in the soil. So we're feeding the soil. Now, all across this site, wherever there's no ground cover yet, we're still bringing some mulch to the trees. So here's a big pile of mulch around a citrus that needs some extra fertility. And it would probably not need the extra fertility if it had ground cover, a perennial ground cover like this. So that's a very, very important part of mulching, in my opinion, to establish the ground covers, because they're always in position. But everywhere else, where we're still trying to establish ground cover, we've got mulches. And these are herbaceous weeds. They're winter herbaceous weeds. The olive here, it's an olive we're under. It's flowering beautifully. Beautiful flowers this year. It's going to be an enormous amount of olives. Olives are often cultivated with bare soil, but we grow with all the local herbaceous plants and our own ground covers. And here where it's shot from the bottom, it'll be pruned, and these prunings will go down as mulch. Everything goes down as mulch. Now, where we've done this on projects, we'd ended up with the highest quality olive oil in the world. We broke world records in Cyprus with olive oil content quality, simply by including lots and lots of herbaceous material instead of ploughing up and bare soiling around the olives. So everywhere I look, there's good mulching going on. This is what makes a difference. And it can come in all kinds of forms. So there are ground covers that are very ornamental and just good looking, but also with good looks, they can function. If they can handle the conditions, they can create the living mulch that makes a difference. So around here, we have a lovely purple flower, and it's mixed in with the Carbaridus. And the Carbaridus has come right across sandstone, and it's creating soil on the sandstone. It's a carpet that's laid out across the sandstone pavers. That's happened in quite a few places. So we can cut that back and we can transplant it out and fill in a lot of our gaps. Here's our little purple plant again. Sorry, I don't know the name of it, but it's in amongst the Carbaridus, and the Carbaridus is, we're encouraging it to take over. Now here we are again. It's coming out on the edge of a set of steps. And here we have our little purple plant that's taken over as a ground cover, and we've encouraged it. And Leucaena has volunteered. So we just simply come through and cut the Leucaena, drop it towards the date palm stem that's in the middle of this garden here. So it's kind of volunteered to be a self-fertilizing system. So you've got a living mulch that's ornamental and a volunteer that's high fertilizer, all around a date palm that's the main theme. So I can just come through and I can just cut the Leucaena right where it is, and I'm fertilizing my date palm in an ornamental ground cover. I mean, how good is that? And that just volunteered to demonstrate it's a little system. As we have Leucaena all the way through the site. Leucaena is one of the replacement legumes from the spiky legumes. There are no spiky legumes left here anymore. Oh, there is, there's one. It's a Jerusalem thorn, it's not quite so spiky. So here we've recently cut the top off this Leucaena, and we'll come through and we'll take the small branches and allow it to grow really nice, longer, larger branches that'll give us shade over summer. So again, we're just dropping high quality mulch. So once you have that cover, once you've got that insulation, you can move forward with a system that will diversify in more and more varieties of plants, more and more varieties of trees, less and less need for fertilizer and compost. It's less demanding, and also less demanding on water. It's a system that moves towards a natural oasis, and that's what you want.